My name is Maxwell Buey. I'm a third generation oyster farmer, born at Brooklyn on the 20th of March 1921. That's Hawkesbury River. I am now 84 years old. I will die with the things that I have learnt that the younger generations will never learn, because how things have changed.
The language of oysters. Charles Olson sat back in his oyster shed, working with words, mostly in a great sweat of being, seeking to bind in speed, looked at his sheaf of pages, each word an oyster, culled from the fattening grounds of talk. They were nurtured from day one, from the spat fields to their shucking, words, oysters plump with life.
Oyster Farmers are a dying game on this river, you know. I can't see anything saving it.
On Mooney Creek, the men stalk the tides for corruption. They spend nights in tin shacks that open at dawn onto our great brown river. On the right tide, they ride out into the light in their punts, battered slabs of aluminium with 100-horse Yamahas on the stern, hammering tightly away, padded by high tech.
While ever there was light and the tide was out, I'd be out there. And if I had an extra good tide out in the night, at the moon, I'd go out and work in the night.
Sucking mud into the cooling systems, the motors leave a jet of hot piss in their wake. These power heads indicate the quality of the morning's hum. The new boys don't wake from dreams where clinkers crack, where mud sucks them under, their grandfather's hands fumbling accurately, loosening the knots. Back at the bunker, the Hessian sacks are packed, ready, and the shells grow into sliding white foothills. A freezing mist clenches your fingers, the brown stream now cold as fire. Plunge in and wash away last night's grog. In middle morning, stinging and you wanting the week to fold away till payday.
We have had outbreaks of other diseases, but nothing like this. If you're going to put a similarity between dirt farming and QX, you'd say it was like foot and mouth disease. It's a death sentence.
On the bank, spur-winged plovers stroll in pairs, their beak wattle chipped by frost. Each day they ping at the crack of sun, stalking for corruption. Signs. Blue algae drifts through your brother's dream of Gold Coasts, golf courses, the first settlement.
Good morning, folks, and welcome aboard the Hawkesbury Explorer for today's mail run. We've got about a dozen stops on the river today, and we'll be covering somewhere in the vicinity of about 45 kilometres or so. To put this part of the river into some sort of perspective, the mouth of the river is about 1 mile downstream from us, down towards that far shoreline. Around Juno Point to the left is Broken Bay and the open ocean. The river actually has its beginnings about 470 kilometres southwest of here, down south of Goulburn, and ultimately becomes the Hawkesbury about 70 miles upstream from us. I believe the reason for the name changes throughout its length was that it was individually quote unquote discovered by 4 different explorers at 4 different periods. For today we go as far upstream as Marlow Creek, which is a little settlement about 12 or 13 miles upriver from here.
The memories that I have of those early days. I could take you into Porto Bay, along the shoreline there, and you dig into the hillside, and you'll see it's just piles and piles and piles of shell. And you'll see forms of shell there that you would never see today.
So these are Aboriginal middens that are
That is
all
true.
oyster
That
shells.
is true.
So the oyster farming in your family started with
With
your
my grandfather. He was the first man to have a franchise of selling oysters on Hawkesbury River Railway Station. He got them off the rocks, the foreshore. There's no such thing as cultivation. That come later. And he had a little tin humpy up from the hill where the council baths are now. And that's where my father was born. Of course, there was no motive power then. The power that you used was what we used to call the Armstrong.
rowing.
Yeah, true, the Armstrong. My father, he was rowing using our Armstrong, and he'd go from here and finish up mashing away at Woi Woi and back with his fish, the old-time prawners. They'd be going up each night as far as Wiseman's Ferry, walking the mud along the banks to get their prawns, and back in the morning. About 30 miles to Wiseman's. And Dad, with his rowing to Woi Woi, well, God only knows how many. I've never done it. But you ask anybody to do those things, you must think we're mad. Even when we were going to school, we were at the weekends helping Dad cultivate the leases. That was, we do the opening and the selling down here by the railway station, 1 shilling a bottle. Cripes, I loved it. I couldn't get home quick enough.
You didn't have any other dreams
Nothing.
except
nothing.
to be an oyster farmer.
Or fishing.
Or a fisherman.
Or fishing. Oh, cripes, yes. You was just dying for the day. You could turn 14. You see, one of Dad's philosophies were when we were young, I never forget it, idle hands make mischief. Because of that, your hands were never idle. And you enjoyed it. Yeah. Times have changed.
Go. Do you want to have a bit of a talk about it first, and I'll show you, because you don't know much about oysters, do you?
No.
We've got a map of the river in here. I've got some photos and that over there to show you.
Do you want me to set those photos up over there?
Yeah, no, I'll get you that. I might get you an extra 20 litres of fuel in the boat too, if you've got a container. This is a Hawkesbury. This is where we are in here.
Down at Brooklyn.
Yeah. And From sort of there right down to the mouth is where they farm oysters. Up here's the finishing off area, and this is the best quality ground. The harvest area, because the oysters, they take 4 years to grow, and they start off down the bottom here,
Down closer to the mouth of the
closer
river.
to the mouth where the spawn comes in, and you put your sticks down there in January, February, and the little oysters swim up and down. They find somewhere nice to catch onto. But the next year you don't want another lot catching on top of those oysters, so you pick them up and you might move them to areas up here,
Further up the creek.
further up the creek, where they won't get so much caught on them. Another catch of oysters,
Yeah.
because they'll just end up a big mass if you don't. And then they'll stay there for the second year, and then they'll go up the river a bit further, where they're laid out more singly and they've got more room to grow, and they're a bit bigger now, and the fish aren't going to worry them so much. And they'll stay there for a further 12 months, and then you'll knock them off the sticks and you'll put them on trays, and they'll go up to these areas, and that's where they get finished off, and that's a fattening area. They get good meat condition in those areas, and then you sell them out of there. We got first informed about the QX on the 6th of June last year, and from the bridge, west of the bridge, nearly every lease was affected. You could still make a living out of it, but things weren't going real good, and we thought, they had all that weed up the top of the river, about 100 kilometres up the river. Thousands of acres up there. There wasn't hundreds, there was thousands. And, we sort of thought that maybe that had something to do with it, because apparently it takes a lot of nitrogen. So we thought the problem was up there. They cleaned up a lot of the weed, and the water conditions were getting better. We had a little bit of rain, and we thought maybe it was a one-off thing. But this year, it's hit 5 times worse than it did last year.
Right.
And all that area up there, all those leases where your harvest area from was where you get your income from, it's all completely decimated. And also they've done tests east of the bridge, and in very light forms, it's everywhere now.
So are you producing oysters from any of your leases at the moment?
No, nothing at all.
Nothing.
No. Our income's completely gone.
Did you put sticks in this year?
Yeah, but after that it just hit so bad that so everything's just came to a halt. It's just a waste of time and fuel to go out and do it. It's all finished. They're all full of oysters, but they're all full of dead oysters, as you'll see this afternoon.
So what are you actually doing?
Grading. Sort them into sizes. They're all basically small. That's just to clean them up.
It's very labour intensive, you've got to spend the hours. They're all done by hand. There's no machines or anything to go through and clean up all your little oysters for you and get them looking like you see them in shops.
It doesn't look like there's all that much dead in it, does it?
No.
But you'll find once you go through them, there's 30%. See that? That's a dead one. That's a live one. That one's hollow, you can tell.
See that? Yeah, definite the sound.
That one's solid. I'm Kevin Buey. I've been oyster farmer, working for myself on the river for 30 years.
I'm Kevin's wife too. I've been oyster farming for about 20 years, in between having kids.
Dad was an oyster farmer, and I used to tell him when I used to have to work when I was 11, I used to tell him I'm never going to be an oyster farmer. It's the last thing I'm going to do. I used to get a whack across the mouth with a tobacco pouch. And guess what happened? Yeah, but oyster farming, he had the tar stuff, and I didn't like that. I still don't.
The road tar.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
and
what did you use it for?
tar and sticks and batten. You dip them in, and it preserves it, would preserve it.
Oh, it's horrible
Nobody
stuff.
likes tar.
Oh,
Nobody
it's terrible stuff. and the dust, if the dust gets on your skin and you get in the sun, it just burns you.
It's like a chemical burn.
Yeah, that's
which
it.
Is a
That would be
chemical
it.
burn.
Yeah, chemical burn.
And you only have to get a bit of dust on you. It's strong stuff.
And, oh yeah.
They don't use it anymore, I don't think. Well, I don't. I know that.
Do you like it?
Yeah, I like oyster farming, yeah. Sitting down culling. That's what I always have liked. I just love sitting down the punt in the sun, going through a few oysters, feeding them. That's what I like about oyster farming. I suppose I like much of it because I'm always out in the water.
Farming the oysters.
We could have drove a bit further, but...
What do you want, mate?
Oh, do they? That was just down there.
They move their black stick bundles across the river, put stakes aside for fresh water, marking racks to drench in tar. Oyster farmers who strive for an order of their own.
This whole roof's not picking up.
Gardening their shells, bunching up smoked mullet, assorting old bleached branches along a ragged shore.
Yeah, but they're the ones I was going to move up the river. Well, I'm going to move them up the river anyway.
On the stern end of their punts, they stand, staring straight ahead. Solitary figures, they power along, driven by 100-horse mercs, burning up and down the river, blind drunk through the dangerous light. They bore towards shacks tucked in the upper reaches, proud-looking gentlemen in black, contemplating to the stern's metal music.
You see any Aboriginal carvings on the rocks up here?
No, but there's middens everywhere. Everywhere you get out, there's a midden, you know.
Yeah.
See that big rock shelf coming out there?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think that's an oyster farmer's midden, but I think there's one there. There's definitely one down there. I reckon there's about 20 middens around there. And over that point there, that one just there, the first point there. Yeah, it's just a huge midden.
Well, folks, our next stop today is Dango Island over on the left-hand side of the boat. Dango was first named Mullet Island by Captain Phillip in the late 1700s, late 1780s. He evidently camped on the island during his expeditions up the river, searching for arable farming land for the new colony. In the mid-1800s, the island came into the possession of Mr. Henry Dango. Dango covers about 70-odd acres and these days has a permanent population in excess of 200 people.
There wouldn't be one person in 1,000 that would have lived the life that I lived. After the war, I was in a tent, but I see the potential. So I built my humpy. Well, the bushfire a couple of years ago burnt it down. But I lived there all my life, where Muddy Point, Portobello. I was there alone and I liked it. I'd go to bed at night, and in my mind, I had it all worked out, what I was going to do, lined up for that following day. Oh boy, dawn couldn't come quick enough. It couldn't come quick enough. Yeah. Year in, year out, year in, year out. I was happy. Tank water and kerosene, no power. And I had a Tilly, a kerosene pressure light. Yep, that's right.
There must have been times where you'd go for weeks without seeing anyone.
Well, only ones that would be coming up to do a bit of oyster farming and going back. You mightn't believe this, but even when my father, he had his boat, he'd row up there, and I said, oh my God, here's Dad. He's going to upset my schedule. I didn't like anybody upsetting my routine. There's always cleaning up to do as far as your racks are concerned, different things. You was never, ever, ever ahead of schedule. The tarring of your trays, cleaning off your trays and cleaning them off and putting them through the tar, letting them dry and getting them out again. You was never short of a job. You'd never catch up with your work. I'd even work of a night, to be honest. Not because I had to, but I was happy you're doing it. Good tide, out in the night. And liking it. I didn't have to do it, but I liked it. Oh boy. Yep, it was my life.
See all their mouths open? They're all dead. There's nothing inside of them. They're just all dead. You know, on a tray like that, if you're lucky, you'll find 3 oysters that are any good. So it's just a total waste of time. Probably over $100 worth of oysters on a tray. Probably got about 10,000 trays or something.
Right. That's a lot of money.
But just here's like your next 12 months income gone. I got an oyster knife here. See if I can find a good one. These at the moment, like see, even the ones that have opened up, they've got no edge. Normally they have a big purple edge sticking up where they're fresh growth, like on a tree. But you can see how devastating it is. It's just every oyster you pick up to death. There's just nothing there. And you're lucky to find a live oyster. It's like a slow lingering death. You know, some of them will die and then you'll come up the next day and there'll be a few more dead and they'll just keep going and going and going. No one will die at the same time. But like, that's a pretty good looking oyster, that, isn't it? He could be, he might be alright. He might be the 1 or 2 on the trail that's any good because he has got a tiny bit of edge. But even that's not a real good edge. You should have a lot. He's bad coloured. When you cut him open in the guts, his guts is not a good colour.
No, that's an awful colour.
The blacker they are, the better they are in the stomach. They get all different colours in the guts. He's not long for this world, that one.
So you won't even bother to harvest what you can out of these trays?
No, you can't harvest them. It's impossible. But like there's 4 years of your life have gone into these oysters. You know, and all the work, and it is hard work.
Nicer colour, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a bit his guts are darker.
Yeah. Still like them, eh?
Oh yeah.
It's not like owning a cake shop where you get sick of the cakes.
No, I never get sick of eating. But I don't think I'm going to be eating too many in the future for a long while, because there's not going to be many out here to eat.
Not silly rocks,
No. But you can see the devastation in there, like, you know, it's just absolutely, it's just completely annihilated them.
Doesn't look such a great colour either, does it?
No.
God.
Dead Horse Bay. Quick hands on spinning ropes at dawn. Blood rising to the jumping cords. Ice pack over bad burns and the catfish venom. Rock salt against gut slime. A southerly blowing up on the full tide. Nets in mud and mesh gutting snags. The bread tasting like Caro's sponge. Crazed gulls crashing into the stern. Mullet at 3 cents a pound by the time the sun hits the bar at the Angler's Rest. Get drunk enough to keep at it. Clean the gear for tonight and another bash. Remember that night in 68? How he killed 'em right through the month. Couldn't have gone wrong. So thick you could have walked over the water. When the brim are running like that, nothing can touch you and everything matters. And you don't want them to stop. And you can't slow down. You can't imagine.
There was birds that would come and fly in through my door on the table and be fed. Kookaburras or little thrushes, they got to know me. There were birds. And I had pythons, snakes that were living with me inside alongside me bed. I had me pythons. And I had to get rid of the pythons because my gliding possums, they were getting depleted. So I thought, cripes, now what's going on here? So I come in off the lease late after dark and I put the torch on and here was one of my possums in the mouth of the python. So I said, oh well, look, I don't like doing this, so you got to go. So one at a time. I put them in a bag and I transported them across the river, so that problem was solved. I also had goanna. I'd tolerate the goanna. I'd feed them. They'd follow me about like a dog. And one day, in the culling shed down by the water, I was culling the oysters. This was a big one, come down, and he had a lot of scars on him. I always knew him. He was a great big one. So I said, okay, you want some food? And I give him some eggs. And then I gave some meat, some raw meat. Next thing, I turned to go back. He jumped up on my leg and he ripped my fingers right open. I learnt the hard way. Their teeth were like a razor. They grabbed me by the hand and the blood, it spurted everywhere, right to the bone. Ripped me and that was it. No more, as far as the bloody goanna was concerned. No more. They're dangerous. Oh boy. Christ, I could call out, as far as the kookaburras were concerned, I could yell out, here, Jack, and I go round the hill, next thing, at the wings, along they'd come, with their young and all, when they had young, with their young and all, yeah, cripes. I loved that bush. I loved animals. I loved the birds. It was a bonza life. Peace and quiet, peace and quiet.
You don't do that with gloves on.
No, never. You wear out gloves, you don't wear your hands out.
You must cut your hands a bit.
Not often.
Yeah, no, they're pretty tough. They get tough. See, I'd always wear a glove though. If you're oyster farm, your hands end up getting just dirty. Sort of ingrained dirt.
My policy is shit everywhere. You know, I used to work down on the water that I was telling you before. And down there, I shit everywhere. So when the thieves come along, they have to sort of look where they're going rather than looking for what they might want to steal, you know. And a bit of trouble getting out of that way of doing things.
Ever catch anyone stealing your oysters?
Yeah. They weren't stealing my oysters, but they were stealing my uncle's oysters. Anyway, we went down in front of this bloke. And my uncle sort of approached him a bit calm. And then he started, you know, he was red in the face and shaking, and I thought he was going to have a heart attack, my uncle, you know. He was I think he might be a good actor, you know. We ended up just letting him go. Took his oysters off him and let him go. And the president of the Oyster Farmers Association once got knocked off for stealing other people's oysters, you know.
So I assume you didn't stay the president for very long, eh?
No, no.
No.
Yeah, oyster thief. It's the funniest thing I ever heard. It was the funniest thing.
It was cutthroat. It was cutthroat. See, the times were of a kind where money was hard to come by. And so that's a lot of things. First, professionalism, you'd keep to yourself.
Were thieves
Oh,
common
yeah,
in the
oh
industry?
yes, they were. I could tell a story about that, and this is in Dad's time. There was a meeting held up in the old hall relative to the thieving in the oyster game. All the oyster farmers were there, and Dad said, "Lock the doors and you've got the lot of them." That was another big advantage of living where I was. This is later on to when the just kerosene. I had my big searchlight, and I could pick up any part of Porter Bay as bright as day. That put off the thieves.
Did you have a gun down at Porter Bay?
I did.
And what was that for?
Well, several reasons. There were 2 islands there, and one of them was for the dangerous criminal. And once in a while, they would escape. And there were very odd occasions when they'd finish up in Porter Bay, and you never knew what you might be encountering. I also had a good rifle, and from where I was culling oysters in my shed, I could look out, and anyone that was, these weren't professional thieves, just ordinary ones, say amateurs, that'd come and take a feed. I'd get my rifle out, it had a good telescopic sight, I'd pick the eye out of a needle as saying goes, and I'd go bang, and they'd take off. I wouldn't try to hit them, but I'd just let them see that when they heard the shot and they in the water, and they'd take off. I didn't have to go out. That's what I had it for. back in those days, there were Halverson cruises. Now, because of the problem that I was having with these cruises, running through my oyster farms, I went down to Mr. Halverson, and he had a notice put on all of his cruises that was out of bounds. So when it come to any problem that I had with a cruiser, it was easy for me to get compensation. So I'd put in a claim of what damage was done, and with my solicitor, he'd say to me, I never forgot his words, he says, Max, but he said, yes, that's the damage, but what about the psychological? I said, yeah, well, that is right too. I said, you got something there? So I'd also have that as part of the claim. Case open and shut. No problem.
Stop today is Kangaroo Point, which comes into view at the end of Long Island. We'll head in reasonably close to Long Island. We sometimes see the pair of resident sea eagles that reside here, as well as the occasional whistling kite. There's also some interesting little water sculptured pieces of sandstone on the edge of the river, about halfway along. So with some quite interesting coloration as well.
That's what they should look like. Nice, white, creamy condition. You find that one, it should be nice and black in the guts.
Mm. Yeah. So, you would have seen this river change a lot over the last, 40 years?
Yeah, definitely.
And how much does development along the river, how much does that affect an industry like this?
Yeah, I think it affects it a lot. All the sewage going into the water, even though it's treated and everything, just the amount of them going into the water and the amount of development up the top of the river over the last few years, especially the last 15 years. Even though the water qualities, they're letting go out of the sewerage works is a lot better, there's a lot more volume than what there used to be. I mean, you understand that people have got to live somewhere, but there must be a better way of managing the sewerage. But also combined with the drought too, because it's been 15 years since we've had a flood down the river, a decent flood. So when you put all of it together, and these little things are the canary of the river, if the oyster industry is not doing any good and the oyster's not growing properly, well, the river's not doing real well. The main thing for these oysters is water quality. They get their food out of the water, and if the water quality is not there, the oysters won't do any good. See, that one's died just not long ago. Still got the gristle left in him.
Mm.
And that one there, he's died longer. He's been died. See, that's a fresh dead one.
Do you get depressed when you come out here?
No, not really. I don't get depressed too much, I just sort of, I just look at it and, you got to look forward, you can't look backwards. I mean, we've got it here and we've got to do something about it as far as, restructuring the industry and cleaning up, so you've got to just dig your heels in. But we can't do it by ourselves, we just got to have a bit of a hand to do it.
This QX is really going to change oyster farming. It's going to be nothing like it used to be. Nothing like it used to be. before you had to pick up all your oysters 3 times a year. Like you have to put out sticks to catch, and then you put out sticks to depot, and you put out sticks to grow. Well, there won't be any of that anymore. They sell you seed oysters, like even say 500 bags, it will be on one tray, and I'm not really sure how I'm going to do that because I don't know much about single seed cultivation. So I'm not really sure what's going to happen.
Have you ever thought about giving it away?
Yeah. I have. But what to do, I don't know. The only trouble with that, I've got 4 kids to feed in school sort of thing.
So do you reckon your boys are going to be oyster farmers as well?
Oh, I'm pretty sure they're not.
I'm talking
pretty
out of
sure
it.
they're not. They've got more brains than I have. There'll always be somebody, I suppose, trying to farm oysters on this river. I don't know. It's all just wait and see what happens this game.
Max, I'm looking at your hands and they're really fine hands.
Yeah.
And yet the amount of manual labour that must have taken place with these hands is quite incredible.
Well, no, but look, I could look at my hands these later years, I'd be disgusted.
Why?
My hands, they were that rough and cut. As far as, say, running my hand as it was then, as far as nylon stockings or anything like that, forget about it. They were so rough. It's amazing, though, how quickly all the marks, the cuts and everything and the roughness goes out of your hands when you're not using them. But as I say, if in my working days they ever looked like that, I'd be ashamed of myself. Unless I'm talking about every day that I was on that lease or even in the shed culling. If I wasn't showing blood, it wasn't normal. You'd be bleed, cutting yourself and ripping yourself. Oh, cripes, it was normal, unless my hands were covered in mud and bleeding and rough as like sandpaper. Right, oh, I'd be ashamed to have hands like that. I've done nothing. Christ. Yep. I'd love to be able to put back the clock, but I know I can't. I've had my day. It's a place, for some reason or other, it grows on you. It becomes part of you. It's peace. It's peace. You're in a world of your own. And that's something that very few people have got. A world of their own. Yeah.
The river. A step taken, and all the world's before me. The night's so clear, stars hang in the low branches, small fires riding through the waves of a thin atmosphere. Islands parting tides as meteors burn air. Oysters powder to chalk in my hands. A flying fox swims by, and an early memory unfolds. Rocks on the shoreline, milling star fire. Its fragments fall into place the heavens revealing themselves, as my roots trail deep nets between channel and shoal, gathering in Milky Way, Gemini. I look all about, I search all around me. There's a gale in my hair as the mountains move in. I drift over lakes, through surf breaks and valleys, entangled of trees, unseemly. On the edge or place inverted from ocean starts another place, its own place. A step back and my love's before me. The memory ash, we face each other alone now. We turn in the rushing tide again and again to each other. Here between swamp flower and star, to let love go forth to the world's end, to set our lives at the centre. Though the tide turns the river back on itself, and at its mouth, ocean.
We'll be back in Brooklyn in about 5 or 10 minutes' time. So can I just take the opportunity of thanking you all for coming with us today. Karen and I do sincerely hope you had an enjoyable few hours on the river with us. And we do trust your afternoon is both safe and enjoyable also. All the best, folks.
In The Oyster Farmers, you heard from Max Buey, his nephew Kevin Buey and wife Sue, and Rob Moxham. Robert Adamson read poems from the book The Language of Oysters by Robert Adamson and Juno Jeames. Thanks to them, John and Jocelyn Powell, the Hawkesbury River Mail Run, and the Oyster Farmers. The program was produced by me, Sharon Davis, with technical production by Stephen Tilley, and additional sound recordings by Philip Ullman.
What I like doing with oysters, you open up a breakfast plate full of about 15 dozen, cook an half dozen pieces of toast, and put a bit of vinegar in the oysters and pepper, and just eat them with toast. That's the best way.
15 dozen.
Yeah, yeah. For breakfast.